Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 52 Living Ideas. I am your host, Devinique, along with Rupali and Brian and Penny. And tonight we will be discussing Shaktism, and we're going to focus on uh, the Tantra Devi and various goddesses tonight. Um, sorry, let me just do one more thing. So I just ask that everyone mute themselves. That way we just don't have any background noise. So just to give an introduction really quick before I start the presentation. Welcome to the series Divine Feminine. We are coming upon almost the end of the study of the Isabella Price book, Awakening the Goddess Within. And Brian is actually going to do the last one, which is going to focus on the Paleolithic civilization next month, which Brian, you will have time at the end to talk about that. So if I forget, please make sure you jump in. And then and then the next book that we're going to be looking at is the Joseph Campbell book, which Joe thankfully put in the chat, as well as Brian just did. So thank you. So tonight, like I said, this came out of the study. I was initially interested in the Hindu goddess Kali. I just always thought like she is just I can't say that word on 52 Living Ideas, but I always just thought she was a bad chick, like she was just strong and, fire and just, this thing where she was just very seemingly destructive. But when I studied her, she was destructive in the best way possible, clearing out all of the negative energy, or as we're going to talk about here, the demons that we have in ourselves, to make room for the good, because destruction is a part of the life cycle and it's not a bad thing. But and then as I got into this study, I was telling Rupali this yesterday. I was like, we have to do a deeper dive into these goddesses because we can't cover it all tonight. We would be here till 2 a.m. in the morning Eastern time. And I know you guys love us so much, but 4 hours might be a bit much and we wouldn't still cover it. So we're going to do a deeper dive into these goddesses and as well, but we're going to do it in between so that, we have time to really study it. And Rupali has graciously agreed to help me out with this. And I want to also thank Jyoti. She's here. Jyoti gave me some great feedback and she gave me a beautiful picture of Lakshmi. And Jyoti, I was trying to find it tonight and it's in my email. I can get it on my phone, but for some reason, I cannot get it on my computer. So when we do a deeper dive, I am definitely including it, but I would love for you to talk about the picture that you have. So I just wanted to thank everyone. So this is not just me. This is a collaborative effort, which I love because I get to meet and get to know better so many great people in this group. So I just want to say welcome and thank you for coming. So with that, I'm going to start this presentation. Just give me 1 second, guys. I apologize. I had it up and now I have to. All right. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. So welcome to Shaktism and the celebration of Mahadevi in India. So the term Shakti refers to the primordial energy or consciousness that gave birth to the cosmos out of its infinite essence, while lovingly attending to the needs of all life, both human and other than human. Shakti is the divine power that transforms inanimate matter into life. And just to add something to this, I agree with Rupali when she says she doesn't like to use the term male or female because we tend to think of it in more human ways. However, the goddesses are the divine power that transforms inanimate matter to life. And the male part is the inanimate matter. So it's kind of like a beautiful dance between male and female energy. Oh, hold on one second. All right, thank you. And then Shaktism maintains that it's ultimately for the purpose of evolution of human culture and consciousness, and the divine, sorry, we're going to actually move on to the Devi. Trying to do something.
Ebony, you're on mute.
Thank you. Did everybody hear the first part? Oh, I am so sorry, guys.
The previous we heard. Devi, this we heard.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to talk about Devi. Devi worship involves both metaphysical principles and anthropomorphic personal goddess. Mahadevi is worshipped in two basic contrasting modes: the gentle, nurturing, benevolent manifestations on one hand, terrifying, destructive, and fierce manifestations on the other. In her benevolent appearances, Devi is viewed as an icon of fertility, maternal abundance, and marital loyalty, especially in her function as, and I am so sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with this. Let me just move it. As especially in her function as the consort of the male Hindu deities. And one of the things that we're going to do in future meetups is we're going to talk about the male and female gods and goddesses. Rupali brought up a good point that we need to do that and to bring the balance. So we are definitely going to do that. So next, Rupali, did you want to say anything before I moved on?
I just wanted to say that, in the universe, if we go to the first two slides, there is potential. And we've seen it in Bhagavad Gita, we've seen it in the Bible. There is the potential that is a stable form. And the potential really can't do anything without the energy. And the energy is the Shakti. So Shakti literally means energy in Hindi. And so unless that potential, and the potential is referred to as the gods or the masculine, and the energy is referred to as the female. So unless the two work together, you cannot have a creation of or a manifestation of a form. And so that I think is really nice to understand. So the female is the energy that has the power to transform something from the inanimate to the animate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And then we're going to go into the Tantra. The Tantra is an advanced system of yogic practices that includes manuals and spiritual technologies designed to explain the mystical awareness of spiritual practitioners. The Tantrics also maintain that liberation could be attained in this very lifetime by fulfilling one's social responsibilities and by actively engaging in this world. And I thought this part here was really a great concept, because most religions have you, or most spiritual practices they have you do a part of this on earth, but then they're like, there's a better world in the next. And when I saw this, I was like, well, the great world is in this one. I think when we did Gospel of John, it was like we talked about creating heaven on earth, and that's what Jesus was creating, was trying to create. And when it talks about in Revelation, it talks about a new heaven and a new earth. So I think with the tantrics, to say that liberation can be maintained in this lifetime and in this body, I just thought that was like beautiful, and that's kind of what we should aim for, is like making a great life now, um instead of focusing on something that hasn't happened yet. So going on, the term tantra in the Indian traditions also means any systematic, broadly acceptable, applicable text, theory, system, method, instrument, technique, or practice. Tantra teaches that everything is sacred, including the traditionally profane or impure. For example, sexual rights and engagement with the taboos such as intoxicants. Such, Tantra has gained an erroneous reputation for advocating uninhibited sex, when it really simply teaches a direct engagement with sexual energy. To uncover the undying divine reality at the core of their being, tantrics focus on visualization, contemplation, meditation, devotion, yoga, selfless service, study, and self inquiry. Tantric practitioners aspire to maintain a meditative focus in order to make sacred even the ordinary acts of life, such as eating, breathing, working, and engaging in committed sexual relations. And another thing that I like about this is that, it demystifies the myth of tantric. And I think Western culture has kind of sexualized it, which is just wrong. Um, I just think it just focuses, like, on freedom now. And I love the part, um, I don't even think I've gotten to this in the presentation yet, but it's doing the everyday things can be spiritual, engaging in everything like cleaning, cooking, working, just taking that and making it spiritual, I think is really helpful getting through the day to day of life. Rupali, did you want to say anything before I moved on? So, according to Tantra, an individual's source of Shakti lies dormant in the base of their spine as Kundalini. Often likened to a serpent, Kundalini is connected to a network of energy channels known as nadis and energy centers called chakras. Awakening Kundalini energy is the primary goal of most tantric practices, including pranayama, mudras, mantras, meditation, and other yogic purification practices. These rituals aim to expand consciousness and liberate the practitioner from the physical level of existence. Tantra is distinct from certain other spiritual traditions in that it focuses on liberation by way of the physical body rather than through transcendence of it. Through experimentation, tantric practices are designed to direct universal energies into the practitioner as a means of breaking free from ignorance, suffering, thereby enabling union with the divine. And then, Rupali, did you want to add anything before we moved on to the goddesses? Okay. I think I'm going to ask anybody, does anybody have any questions or comments? If you do, you can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom before we move on. Oh, Brian.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
When I was reading this chapter, and also now in the presentation, I was wondering if the tantric practices that were described here are necessarily associated exclusively or primarily with goddesses. They are obviously this discussion of tantric or tantric is embedded in a book on goddesses and Shakti, and I can understand that Shakti is a part of the tantric practice, but is it necessarily appropriate that it's in a book on goddesses? Could it also be in a book about gods?
I don't see why it couldn't be. I don't think it's primarily, I don't think Tantra is primarily female goddesses or even like divine feminine energy. I think it's both. Rupali, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's the union. It's the union of the masculine and the feminine potential that all of us have within us, right? So there is this Ardhanari Narishwar, which is part of, so Shiva and Parvati, they're like two halves. In the same body, you have the masculine, you have the feminine. And basically, the Tantra is basically unifying both the masculine and the feminine. So I think the part about meditation and bringing that union together is part of the tantric work that Evanik highlighted.
Thank you, Rupali. I see that there are no more questions, so I'm just going to move forward. So the first goddess that we're going to talk about is, oh, sorry, I see two people raise their hand. I'm sorry, Brian, did you have something else?
Actually I did, but I wasn't able to figure out how to raise my hand. The gosh, now I forgot my point.
We can always come back to it.
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to go to Saraswati. Oh, Joe, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, so just so I'm understanding this correctly, is that this is actually more about focusing at the physical and the mental, actually liberation of our own energy, not necessarily focusing on what other yogas focus on, which is essentially things like detachment or focus. So I'm just, my understanding is I just want to make sure my understanding of this is actually clear with Kundalini yoga and tantras versus different other types of yoga that we've studied here in the past.
I think that, let me make sure I got your question first. So you're asking, this is different from like things we studied, like detachment, detachment from things, correct?
So yeah, the objective of this yoga is more about the liberation of physical and mental energy. I just want to be clear on that. Is that correct?
I think you got it. Yeah, it's
Okay.
more liberation in this body. But I don't know. Okay. What I'm not sure of though is that detachment, as you describe it, is not a part of it. It could very well be a part of it. Maybe detachment from certain things that are harmful to you or harmful to your development. Rupali, anything to add?
I don't know much about Kundalini yoga, so I don't want to comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Joe. I don't see anybody else. Joe, can you tell me if I'm missing anybody?
I remembered my
Brian.
Thing. There Brian. He is. Yep.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I remembered. It just strikes me, since it's a part of the Price book, this idea of a union is very similar to the idea of the sacred marriage, which is very ancient in the Middle East. That you create something through the union of the male and female, or through a union, and it's embodied or personified, reenacted through male and female humans. So it just struck me that it's so similar.
Yeah, I could definitely see similarities, but and you know, definitely with, you know, the marriage part and the holy union, and you know, with the marriage. So yeah, I definitely see that as well. Good point. All right, if no one else has any questions or comments,
I'll say one more thing.
yeah, absolutely.
And this is not, I have no basis for this, you know, because I have no background in this area. But when I read it, you know, it's not, I read it as you know, you said, I think liberation in the body. I saw it as liberation through the body, that you can experience things, if you will, through the body, which can lead to this liberation. Although, you know, I just really am. It's just a whole area that probably, if we were to do it, would merit a lot more discussion. But I'm sure it's so deep and different.
Yeah, I could definitely see your point as it going through the body. I think I in my mind, I think of it as the same thing, in the body, through the body. I think of it as both, or as the same, or a similar concept. So I would definitely agree with you. It's through the body as well. Okay, so I don't see anybody else. So Brian, that's the same hand, right? Just want to make sure I'm not.
Oh, let me
like,
take it down. I figured out how to do that. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So now we're going to talk about Saraswati. As Saraswati, Devi is the consort of the god Brahma. Saraswati is the much beloved Hindu muse, and she inspires all forms of creative and artistic expression. Her lute is viewed as a symbol of the primordial sound vibrations of the universe. As the goddess of wisdom, speech, music, and knowledge, Saraswati is also known as the mother of the Vedas, the sacred books of Hinduism recorded in Sanskrit. Devi tends to be more subordinate in her role as consort. And then, as we can see here, in the imagery of Saraswati is the four arms, and she's holding a book. I'm One of the things I'm going to study when we go further into her is, you know, what that book is and what it symbolizes. And then it says that she's holding a rosary, which I thought was very interesting because as a Catholic schoolgirl, we associate the rosary with the mother, with Mary, the mother of God. So I'm so interested in studying the symbolism of that and what that means. And then the musical instruments that she is holding is called a vina. So I thought that was very interesting. And for me, just through my eye, it reminds me of a cross between a guitar and a violin. So, Rupali, did you have anything to say about this before we move?
So I want to say that, you know, in Hinduism, we have Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, or Shiva, who form the three devas, or the Trinity, and Brahma is the creator. So here Brahma with Saraswati, and Brahma has four heads. So one is. I didn't get that. Oh, could you try again? Sorry, that's my Siri trying to understand something more. So Brahma has four heads, and one represents the intellect, the mind, the other the senses, the third head about imagination and creativity, and the fourth one is for self-consciousness or the ego. And Saraswati mirrors that. So she has the book that she's holding is the Vedas. And so that's the intellect and the creativity, all the creative arts. So music, art, dance, all of that is represented through the creativity. The mala is for meditation, the rosary that signifies meditation, and the self-consciousness. So they kind of complete each other. The devas are pretty much powerless without the goddesses. So in Hinduism or in Vedic philosophy, the god and the goddesses are together. And so even when you look at both at the faces, they're very serene. And Saraswati, when we did Bhagavad Gita, we talked about the gunas. So Saraswati is in the Sattva Guna. When she wears if you look at her clothes, she wears white and gold. She's very serene. She's at peace. So she is the mother of knowledge. And I remember as growing up as a child, in the spring, we would celebrate Saraswati. So it's called Vasant Panchami, and we would celebrate Saraswati on that day. And all of us would have our books out, our musical instruments. Later on, even our computer would be out, and we would worship these sources of knowledge and creativity and wisdom that we had in our own houses. So it's a common practice in India that you worship knowledge, and knowledge is held at a very high status. It's, if you have knowledge, you can understand. So Saraswati also, she has a pot of water in one of her hands. She has 4 hands. The pot of water just shows, you can separate things. You can separate good from evil. You can separate right from wrong. So she offers that capability of separating good from bad. The vehicle that she uses is the goose. Again, the white goose can symbolizes it's same thing. It symbolizes good from evil. So in many ways, she kind of sets the tone for, how should you think? How should you embrace life with just your mind and your creative impulse?
Thank you, Rupali. When you said that the rosary was it was for meditation, I was thinking of that, and I was like, that is the same thing as we use the rosary for in the Catholic Church. You say prayers and it's kind of meditative, but the prayers are repetitive. I think you say 10 Hail Marys and then 1 Our Father, and then you keep going around and around. So I love that. It's just very similar. Nalini, I see you put exclamation point in the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that actually, if you can bring the picture of Saraswati back, it's the swan actually is the Vahan, we call it, on which she sits. And then the other thing is that Saraswati, the word Saraswati, the root word is Saras. And that's how you have Saraswati. Of course, Rupali mentioned so many things, which was just amazing. But I also wanted to say or share that she decided not to bear any children because she represents the wisdom of books and constant learning, but also independence by doing that. And the veena you mentioned, it's a stringed instrument, which is supposed to tune one's mind and body into a harmony. And the prayer beads, of course, are the spiritual knowledge. Those are some of the things I wanted to share. And the yellow and white, I think Rupali mentioned that, but the swan and the peacock, they flank Ma Saraswati, and they both stand for beauty and pride. But one has to remember that one has to be mindful of any vanity or ego when they talk about the beauty and pride. So just a little bit.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing, Nalini. That was very insightful. And thank you, Rupali, for adding to this. So I'm getting so much out of it. Like, this is amazing to me. So I appreciate everything that you all are saying. So now I'm going to move on. Next we're going to talk about Lakshmi. So she is the goddess of wealth, fortune, power, beauty, fertility, prosperity, and associated with Maya illusion, along with Parvati and Saraswati. I know I'm mispronouncing, I apologize. Saraswati, she forms the Tridevi of Hindu goddesses. Lakshmi is both the consort and the divine energy, Shakti of the Hindu god Vishnu, the supreme being of Vaishnavism. She's also
Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism, because it's from Vaishnav, and you just add ism to it, so it's Vaishnavism. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. You never have to apologize. She is also the supreme goddess of the sect and assists Vishnu to create, protect, and transform the universe. Lakshmi in Sanskrit is derived from the root word laks and laksa, meaning to perceive, observe, know, understand, goal, aim, objective, respectively. These roots give Lakshmi the symbolism know and understand your goal. A related term is Laksna, which means sign, target, aim, symbol, attribute, quality, luck, mark, and the rest of that got cut off. And I'm sorry, guys, I ran this presentation right before and it wasn't cut off. So I don't know what happens in Zoom, but I apologize. So I'm going to move forward. She represents the Rajas Guna and the Lakshya Shakti.
No,
The image,
Icha Shakti.
Isha Shakti. Thank you. The image, icons, and sculptures of Lakshmi are represented with symbolism. Lakshmi's iconography, she is either sitting or standing on a locust, and typically carrying a lotus in one or two hands. The lotus carries symbolic meanings in Hinduism and other Indian traditions. It symbolizes knowledge, self-realization, and liberation in the Vedic context, and represents reality, consciousness, and karma, work deed in the Tantra context. The lotus, a flower that blooms in clean or dirty water, also symbolizes purity regardless of the good or bad circumstances in which it grows. It is a reminder that good and prosperity can bloom and not be affected by evil in one's surroundings. Rupali, looks like you want to say something?
So I would say, so we talked about Brahma and Saraswati. The next is Lord Vishnu, and his consort is Lakshmi. Again, Vishnu is the preserver of the universe, but Vishnu cannot do anything with the potential. It needs Shakti, and so Lakshmi is his Shakti, is his energy that can manifest. Now we've seen, Vishnu's incarnation, Ram and Krishna. Similarly, Lakshmi's incarnations are Sita and Radha or Rukmini. So it's very interesting to see how the same pair you see in different incarnations. I really like Lakshmi. She is very she's very much about ethics, living moral lives, doing the right deeds. She is full of love and emotion. She also symbolizes wealth and prosperity. And I remember during Diwali, we would, on the darkest night of Diwali, you celebrate Dhanteras, Dhan literally meaning wealth. So you're celebrating prosperity. And it's on the darkest night that you light the lamps and you celebrate, you welcome Lakshmi in your house. I remember we would clean the house, everything was at my grandparents' place. We would whitewash the walls and then put rangoli in the front yard. And at night, we would light these lamps, and early dawn, we would celebrate the welcoming of Lakshmi. So it's typical that people will purchase gold on that day to kind of signify wealth. They bring wealth to their house. The other part is lotus. I mean, if you've seen a water lily or a lotus blooming, it comes up from the filth, and then when it blossoms, none of that filth is on it. So just rising above all adversities to be this pure form is beautiful. So thank you, Ebony.
You're welcome. Thank you. And then to continue on, I think you probably did a great job. So Lakshmi is very often shown with one or two elephants known as, I'm not even going to try.
Gaja Lakshmi. Gaja means elephant.
Lakshmi.
And Lakshmi is Lakshmi. So Gaja Lakshmi, we saw that, she can be represented with or without the elephants. If the elephants are present, then she's known as Gaja Lakshmi.
Thank you. And sometimes she's occasionally with an owl. Elephants symbolize work, activity, and strength, as well as water, rain, fertility for abundant prosperity. The owl signifies the patient striving to observe, see, and discover knowledge, particularly when surrounded by darkness. As a bird reputedly blinded by daylight, the owl also serves as a symbolic reminder to refrain from blindness and greed after knowledge and wealth has been acquired. And I love that because it teaches us temperance. And I think the thing about blindness and greed after knowledge and wealth have been acquired, because I think sometimes there is such a thing as knowing too much, and I think it's when you know too much and then it puts you in a state of inaction, and that is when you're being greedy. So yeah, I just love that significance of the owl. And then Rupali, did you want to say anything before we moved on? Okay, so the next goddess of the Tridevi is Parvati. It's the Hindu goddess of power, energy, nourishment, harmony, love, beauty, devotion, and motherhood. She is a physical representation of Mahadevi in her complete form. She is also revered in her appearances as Durga and Kali, which we're going to look at next. She is one of the central deities of the goddess-oriented sect called Shaktism and the chief goddess in Shaivism. Along with Lakshmi and Saraswati, she is known as the Tridevi. Parvati is the wife of the Hindu goddess Shiva. She is the reincarnation of Sati, the first wife of Shiva, who immolated herself during Yana fire, which is a fire sacrifice. Parvati is the daughter of the mountain king Himavan and Queen Meena. Uh, she is the mother of the Hindu deities Ganesha and Kartikeya. The Puranas also reference her to be the sister of the river goddess Ganga and the preserver god Vishnu. For Shaivites, she is considered to be the divine energy between a man and a woman, like the energy of Shiva and Shakti. Um, and Parvati is the ancient embodiment of Shakti. And Shaivism is she is the recreative energy and power of Shiva, and she is the cause of the bond that connects all beings and means of their spiritual release. She is also well known as Kamarupa, the embodiment of one's desires, and Kameshwari, the lady of one's desires, which I just thought was very interesting because I know in some um in the Gita sometimes it talks about, releasing the desires and not letting the desires control you. So I think it's just interesting that she is the embodiment of one's desires. Rupali, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I want to say, there's so much about Shiva and Parvati. Shiva is the lord of destruction, and Parvati is this calming force, I feel, with Shiva. She is the mother of Ganesha. Ganesha is one of the gods that people pray to for any good beginning. So you want to begin something new, you would pray to Ganesha. She is also the mother of Kartikeya. So Kartikeya and Ganesh, they have many stories. Also, she is a benevolent mother. She gives a lot. She uh, offers a lot to her children. There's, you don't really see much about the motherhood aspect with Saraswati and Lakshmi, but you see with Parvati, there are many stories about Parvati and Ganesh, and how they depict what it means to be a family. So that's one thing I wanted to share. The other part is where you talked about Shiva and Kameshwari. And so there are temples in India which are just devoted uh, to goddess uh, Kameshwari. And that's another name for Parvati. So those are some things I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupali. So now we're going to go into the last part of the presentation, which is Kali, which is where I think my love of the Hindu goddesses started because I wanted to study her. And then I realized there was so much background before you get to Kali that I fell in love even more. So let's talk about her. So, in her terrifying and fierce manifestations, as Kali or Durga, the goddess takes on a much more autonomous role, emerging as the great protectress of the cosmic order and the fearless warriorness with the power to destroy all illusions. Kali's nakedness symbolizes her knowledge of the naked or perfect truth beyond the veils of delusion. The human skulls and the girdle represent finite worldly attachments that are being destroyed by the Dark Mother if we invoke her. She is the force that governs and stops time. Everything originates from her and ultimately is devoured by her at the moment of death. As the mistress of the sacrificial blood, symbolizing the life force, Kali presides over the mysterious mysteries of life and death. As life the giver, the blood of her, and I'm sorry, this got cut off. But I one thing I love about this is that in one study that I did of Kali, it says that she destroys the ego. She destroys everything that you think you're supposed to be, and to coming into who you are. Rupali, did you want to add anything before I moved on to the next slide?
Yeah, I mean, Durga and Kali, they represent the Supreme Mother. And Kal in Sanskrit means time. So, Parvati was born um, to the to King Himavan, which is the Himalayas. There is no story for Kali where she is born, because Kali always existed. She is time. So there was time before and now and will continue. She's always there, always existing. So uh, so she just goes through this dance of time, and you can see she's dancing on Shiva. So her consort is Shiva. She is an incarnation of Parvati, and Shiva is lying down in a kind of a stable state, whereas she is this dance, wild dance of Kali going on top of it. And the again, there is that energy that's the stable, and then the energy that is manifesting. The other part of Kali, the word Kali means black, and she comes from that dark void in the universe. She is that black. And so as a child, I used to be scared of seeing Kali's statues, just because it is black with this red tongue hanging out and these 10 arms that can be terrifying. So within Kali, you can see, she can have the power to create, and she can also have the power to destroy. And so if you look at a mother, I think that nurturing creative impulses in all of the feminine species of all creation. And if that feminine, if the child is endangered, or the property or that uh, domain of that female is endangered, then that same female of the species can get really vicious and can destroy. She'll do anything to protect. And Kali represents that, Durga represents that. So what about her red tongue? The story goes that there was this monster. Now, why did the gods need Kali? Because there were all these demons attacking the gods. Now, you can look at the demons as a metaphor for the demons within us, right? There are these negatives, and you have to fight those negatives. You have to fight those demons within you. But the gods needed the power of the goddess. They needed Kali, the Shakti or the energy to defeat these demons. And so they created, they had Durga and they had Kali. Now, there was this demon called Rakta Bij, which literally means the seed of blood. And the power that this, or you can call it its superpower that this monster had, was that if a drop of blood fell, then it would just multiply as another Rakta Bij. It would just clone itself. And so the demon never really died, it just multiplied. And the gods were like, okay, what are we going to do about this? So they kind of brought forth Kali to take care of this demon. And so Durga and Kali go after this demon. And Durga, with all her weapons, she is striking Kali. She's striking Rakta Bij. And then Kali goes after him and laps up all the blood so that there's no more incarnation, no more forms of Rakta Bij forming again. So that's the story behind the tongue. Also, it represents the fiery, if you see images of Kali, there's fire. So it's again the tongue of fire. You can see that metaphor in there. And then she is, going through time, dancing. It's like your ups and downs of life. they're all represented through Kali's dance, and there is Shiva. And so people were like, all the gods were like, what do we do? She's just creating havoc with her dance. So Shiva just lays down under her feet. And then she realizes, oh, wait a minute, this is my consort. And then she calms down. And so that you'll always see Kali's picture or statue with Shiva lying down flat, and she's dancing on Shiva. So those are some of the things. Again, she is, if you see in one hand, she has a head and there's a bowl to catch the blood underneath. She has weapons. Her necklace is made up of skulls. So she represents really, truly the power of the feminine, the creator, the protector, as well as the destructor. Thank you, Ebony.
Thank you, Rupali. So to continue on, so Kali is worshipped as a great protectress, as Rupali already so beautifully said, who guards us from harm caused by natural calamities such as floods, droughts, fires, earthquakes, famines, and diseases. Creation continues as long as the universe exists, because the creative process is ultimately an expression of God's love for life in all its facets. In the end, life itself with its continuous evolution is the dance, as Rupali was referring to. Kali's dance is this ever unfolding cycle of life and death. As the creative divine impulse, the goddess is the force that rules evolution as apparent in the cycles of nature and time, eons, ages, seasons, day and night. And I love this image. Rupali, I have to say, did a great job finding all of these images. And this one is I think, talks about war, the Kali meaning black, and the fire around her. I just think it's amazing. Oh, sorry. And just wanted to point out the skulls again. Now, this image I love. Well, I shouldn't say I love because that's a little morbid, but these skulls have more of a human face to them. It feels like so. Now, Rupali, can you tell me what she's holding in her hand on this one? It doesn't. It looks like I want to say
I don't know whether that is. I don't know. I can't quite make up. But she has different instruments in her. She has a spear or a trident that she uses. So I don't know what that particular weapon is.
Okay. Thank you. So I think this is the end of the presentation. One thing I wanted to say before I open it up to questions and comments is that I love that all these goddesses are multidimensional. They have different personalities. They have, different ways of thinking. And I like humans that are multidimensional, like these goddesses are even more multidimensional. So I want to thank Rupali for presenting with me tonight. Amazing job. So now, if anybody has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Oh, Rupali, go ahead.
I just wanted to read a short poem from Devi Mahatmya. It says, about the goddesses, it says, by you this universe is born. By you this world is created. O Devi, by you it is protected. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. That was beautiful. So if anybody has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Just give it a minute. Rupali, you did a great job, though. No one has anything to say.
Thank you.
So first, it looks like we have Connie, followed by Joe, and then Brian.
Yeah, Rupali, I loved your stories about when you were a child, and it sounded like there was ceremonial days. So in current India, or when you were a child, how much belief or ritualism is around? Like, how would you equate it? Is that like a religion? Is it more, and it's not mythology? So could you tell me what the goddesses played in sense of a sense of reality, or is it more stories?
So we have statues of gods in our house. We have a temple in the house. There's one room dedicated to the temple, and that's pretty common in houses in India. And so we grew up with these stories. There's a statue of Saraswati right in my parents' living room, and so we see it every day. We talk about it every now and then. There are references. As I said, during festivals, we would celebrate or honor Saraswati and Lakshmi. There's the Ganesh Chaturthi when you talk about Parvati. There is in eastern, northeastern part of India, you have a very big celebration of Durga, and it's called Durga Puja, or even with Kali. And you have 9 days to celebrate the festival of feminine energy. It's called Navratri. Nav meanings 9, and Ratri meanings nights. Ratri is another name of Kali. Actually, Kali's original name, if you go back in history, Ratri is the first name and then becomes Kali, because Ratri is night. It's dark as night, and so there you have Kali. But in India, you celebrate 9 days to just celebrate the feminine energy. And those are called Navratri. There's a lot of dancing. You worship the Mahadevi. You sing prayers. Now, so some of it is ritual. But I'll tell you one of the things that growing up, my mother-in-law, my husband and I were neighbors. So my mother-in-law would invite young girls to her house during Navratri, and she would wash our feet, and then she would serve us wonderful lunch, and she would give us gifts. So we talked about foot washing in the Bible. We talked about foot washing in the Gita. It is still a prevalent practice. It's for people in North India that is actually done even now. Now, some of it is done as just rituals. People just do it because they've seen other people doing. But some people are genuinely looking at the significance behind it. So, Connie, India is a large country, and there is a variety of beliefs and a variety of people that live there. So some people follow the traditions or the rituals just because they've been there. They really don't look at the significance. But some people look at the significance and do it with knowledge. Either ways, all of these festivals still are done in a big way in India.
That was beautiful. I love this, as Evanique does. I had never heard of these, and this is just fabulous. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, up next, I have Joe, Brian, and Nalini. Joe, you're up.
Yeah. So I mean, there's something that I can say about maybe each of the goddesses, but something about Lakshmi, again, we had talked about already with the rituals. One of the things, it's light over darkness, but it's also like knowledge over ignorance as well, which is actually kind of, I've seen as a reoccurring theme in Indian culture. and you see this with Nana Yoga as well, or things like this. And what was interesting, and something Shrikant actually had said to me a while ago, and I found to be true, is that he said, it's in Indian culture, it's more important to learn than it is to eat. Like literally, it's that is the values that are held on knowledge. So I was wondering, like, what are the influences that these goddesses have had as far as that influence, as the importance of knowledge and over over other things. I mean, it's and I do realize that Lakshmi doesn't ignore the material aspect. She's also the goddess of wealth, but there is this seem to be this primacy of knowledge continuously throughout most of the goddesses and Indian culture in general. So I was just wondering if you would maybe could share some comments on that. Even I don't know, Shrikant may want to even comment on that at some point. I don't know. I have some other follow-ups I could ask too about the other goddesses.
Shrikant, do you want to say anything? You haven't spoken yet.
Sure. So firstly, I want to say thank you, Evanik. This was an amazing presentation. And I really love the comments of Nalini and Rupali because it fleshed it out, so it is just amazing. So can I give a little bit of overview of these as I understand them? Evanik, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there are three gods, okay? Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. And then there are three goddesses, Saraswati, Parvati, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and let's say Kali, okay? It's not one god, it is three gods and three goddesses as the basic set. Okay, these are like this is a fundamental set. So this is like gods, okay? Now, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, Brahma is about creation. Vishnu is about sustenance, and Shiva is about destruction and transformation, okay? And their consorts reflect, there is a back and forth relationship. So Brahma, who is all about creation, his consort is Saraswati, who is all about knowledge. Vishnu, that is about sustenance, his consort is Lakshmi, who is about wealth, prosperity. And then there is Shiva, who is about destruction, whose consort is Kali, who is actually personification of destruction of things, which is, and all these three are considered natural parts of our lives. And so it is the 6 characters. So think of these as 6 characters and see how rich a palette this is, how it covers every aspect of your life. Now, and this is at a very high level, but if you go a little bit closer, each of them have their own, different, like Brahma has these 4 heads, okay? Saraswati has these 4 hands. So each of them, there is a lot more going on with each of them than just creation. Similarly, each of them have different versions, different avatars. So there is Kali and there is also Parvati, who are both consorts of Shiva. Vishnu has all these avatars. Ram is avatar, so is Krishna, so is Nara-Narayan, which is like a pair of God, and who's basically, they're supposed to be like predecessors of the Krishna and Arjun pair. So each of these gods have all these different avatars. And this entire palette together is the constellation of gods. And so far, I think I've covered only maybe less than a dozen of 100,000 gods that are there, okay? And the beauty of it is that each person or each group worship the gods, that their own gods. So there are people who are Vaishnavites, whose entire kind of focus is on Vishnu. There are Shaivites, whose entire focus is that on Shiva. There are Shakti worshippers whose focus is on Shakti. But all of them regard all of these as gods. And there is this entire complex that goes on. So that's a quick overview. Now, answering Joe's question, actually, the Indian pantheon covers every aspect. It covers knowledge, it covers wealth, it covers destruction. And all of them have places of honor in it. So it's a very rich, and the goddesses are also worshipped, as Rupali was pointing out, Saraswati, you start by, bowing to Saraswati. Now, Saraswati is not the only version of knowledge. There is Ganesh, who is kind of the start of knowledge in its own. So that's the child of Shiva and Parvati. So what I'm saying is that it's a far more complex palette of gods. And it speaks, and when you zoom in on any of the gods, there is incredible richness and incredible development. And there is this entire story of how these gods interact with one another. So the relationship between Brahma and Vishnu. Vishnu is lying down, and from his navel, Brahma is produced. So creation is happening in the context of sustenance. There are things where gods all say, okay, only Shiva can handle this. So let's go to Shiva for this particular thing. So it's this entire palette. So that's my longish answer to your question. I don't know whether I succeeded in answering.
Thank you, Shrikant, and thank you, Joe. Joe, I know you have some other points, so I will circle back to you. So up next, I have Brian, followed by Nalini. Oh, and if anyone else has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom.
Well, already we've gotten much deeper into the topic, which I think is great. I just had the observation, I think this is so exciting because together with Mother Mary and then Ocean from Africa, this is the only tradition that's continues today. So it's really, really fascinating to follow it. And I guess, reflecting back a little bit on the various chapters, it seems that the chapters of the Price book, it seems that the divine feminine, the eternal divine feminine, it's been in some places it's always existed, but in other places where it has been neglected, it is being revived, and that seems to be very encouraging. That's really all I have.
I have a couple questions too, because you said Shakti is kind of like the energy that creates everything, and that the kind of equivalent masculine was like potential. And is there a name for like the potential? Like Shakti, is there a name for the potential, the masculine potential that's the basis of the whole universe? And are the like Lakshmi and Kali, are they kind of manifestations of Shakti or not?
So I would say that Dev and Devi are the masculine and the feminine. So
Okay.
Deva or Devi, those are the masculine and feminine penny. And what was your question about Kali?
Oh, no, I was just saying are the female goddesses like Kali and Lakshmi and Saraswati, are they somehow like manifestations of Shakti, or do
Yeah.
they just?
Right. So, first there is the Mahadevi. Maha means supreme, the supreme mother, and that's Mahadevi. And from Mahadevi, you have all these other incarnations of the Devis. So you have, various attributes or various ideas like prosperity, knowledge, strength, devotion, you have love, desire. So all these ideas are personified through different goddesses. So Saraswati personifies knowledge, Lakshmi personifies prosperity, Kali personifies strength, as well as the cycles of time, right? So each goddess makes one idea concrete. But basically, it's just for our understanding, right? The human understanding, how to grasp these ideas. These are just concrete forms of those ideas. And then, over time, people have developed stories around these goddesses that then make, like, you can remember through those stories, you can remember what the moral of the story is. And then you strive to live up to that moral and make it part of your life. So they all originate from Mahadevi, means supreme, the superior goddess.
Thank you, Rupali. Thank you, Penny and Brian. Up next, I have Nalini, followed by Joe.
Hi. First of all, Shrikant, that was beautiful. What you explained, and it was done so beautifully. And Rupali and Avanik, it was an amazing evening for me, and I'm sure for everyone else. I was not actually planning to talk about it, but I heard Shrikant, and I don't know because I'm new to this group. You might have already mentioned it at some point. But Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, as Shrikant said, that Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva, of course, is for the destruction. I don't know if you have ever kind of thought about Om when you pronounce it. How did you? Okay, I hear.
No, please go on. These things are worth talking about for many, 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 many years. So please go on. Please talk about Om.
So Om is a Sanskrit word, and when you break it, it's three vowels. It's A, U, and Ma. Ma is another vowel. So when you pronounce Om, actually you open your mouth, and that is the creation. So Om, when you say you're opening your mouth. So that represents the creation of the universe. U is constant. So that is the sustainability. That's where it comes. And then you say Om Ma, you close your lips. So that is the coming to the end. So I just wanted to share that. I wasn't sure if you had already shared it probably several times, but that always fascinated me. I'm always fascinated by that, how the two relate to each other, and Om and the three, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So I wanted to share that. The question I have is about actually Tantra. You started that, but I would like to know a little bit more about it as to how you related it to yoga. And then you talked about Kundalini. So I want to know a little bit more. I think I was lost in that. So if you could, I would appreciate that. And I think I have a little bit different understanding, but I would like to know a little bit in depth about that. Thank you.
Polly, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
I don't know much about Kundalini. I know that people do practice it, but I don't have much to share.
So I like Rapali. I love when I put things in. I should explain this a little bit. When I put things in PowerPoint, I love to just put it out there. So, like when I find a point fascinating, I put it out there. And I guess to my fault, I don't know very much about it, and I'm hoping that people can add to it during the discussion. But I put it out there because I think it's fascinating, and I'm here to learn. It's not just to present, but to learn. But I'm going to let Sheree Kant go because
Okay,
I think Sheree
I
Kant
also,
knows something.
no, I don't know anything. I know a little bit, but I wanted to talk about something which is connected to the Om and Tantra. I don't know anything about Tantra in particular, but there is a general point about the Indian mind that I want to talk about, and I want to connect that up. See, the beautiful thing about Om is you just say Om. It's in a single breath. You're covering all of the things that you need to focus on in the universe. You're saying creation, because you're not supposed to just chant. You're supposed to, when you're saying oh, you're supposed to think of the creation. When you're saying ooh, you have to think about sustenance. And when you're saying you have to think about destruction. And the most important thing is that then you breathe in and you hear the universe. That is the fourth part of kind of, listening to that. It's like, Gnaneshwar puts it very beautifully, it's like calling a child. Only if you mean that, it's not about just repeating the name that sounds like that. Only if you have that love and understanding of the child will respond. And that's what you listen to. So look at what is being done. The profoundest ideas of philosophy and of religion are being covered in a single breath. That is the core idea here. It is, when we looked at Sri Aurobindo's work, Nilesh was here talking about it. It is basically this integration of spirit and matter. It is the movement from the sky onto the earth, and then from earth to the sky. It's that entire cycle that you're going through. And that is reflected in every breath. that is reflected in your life, in everything that you do. That same cycle, the same connection between the spirit and matter is explained in the concept of the chakras. You have the Kundalini, which is the, in the Muladhara chakra at the base of your spine. Okay, again, I have very, very basic understanding of this. Okay, so you have that, and that is your connection to the physicality of life. And then there is a chakra right above your head, which is the spirit. And the entire practice of yoga is about having things move from the matter to the highest of the spirit and back down. So there is that cycle, and it goes, there is a very elaborate description of it and mapping of it into your body. Again, look at it, look at what is being done and how profound this is. Just like all of gods are being thought of in a breath, the entire spiritual discipline is mapped into your body. You have the spirit right here at the top of the head. Then you have this, which is your power of concentration of your in the mind. Then you have the ability to speak words. And again, speech is being able to say Om. That kind of speech we're talking about. You have the base of, the center of, connecting at solar plexus, basically. Then you have the stomach. So there are these different aspects of us, our emotionality, our courage, our strength is all mapped into the body. And it's all about letting things flow through, where your physical action, your emotional action, your determination, your strength, your heart chakra, your love, your speech, your concentration, and the spirit, the Brahma, is all connected together, and the energy is flowing. So Tantra is simply means the method. It's the mechanism. And the purpose of it is to have the spirit and matter integrated. So this is not much. And the beautiful thing is that the Indian corpus is as large as the Western corpus. So there are many, 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 many different ways of doing yoga. Lots of things are developed in lots of ways. So Tantra is a small part, is a part of this entire picture. But the beauty of it is that this entire thought is all about integratedness. Again, coming back to this point about God and goddesses, I find that the integration between gods and goddesses is so deep that you can't think of one without the other in this context. So, Rupali brought up this point, many times during this discussion, that you really have to get both. Otherwise, you don't get anything. It's like saying that I'm only going to look at courage and not connect it to anything else. You can't do that. So you can't really study goddesses without the gods. You can't really study the gods without the goddesses, because it is this system of flow. It is like spirit and matter. You can't separate. The moment you focus on one and say no to the other, you lose that also as well. So you're left with nothing. So that's what I would say. I don't know whether that answers your question, Nalini.
No, it helped. I think I need to go back to those slides and look at them again so that I can understand. I didn't have a clear understanding myself. So I will do that. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nalini, just to let you know, I did put the link to the Google PowerPoint slides in the chat, so feel free to go and look at those. I want to thank Shrikant for explaining that, because, you know, the thing I found fascinating about it is the chakras, because I want to learn more about it. And like I said before, I just put it out there. You know, this is what I learned. I will fully admit I don't know much about this topic, but I'm fascinated by it. Kind of like Shrikant says about the Gospel of John, except that he knows more than he says. But
no, there's so much. There is so much. Stephanie, go ahead.
So I feel like Shrikant, except that Shrikant knows more than I do, even about John. So up next, I have Joe. And if anyone else has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in the chat. Joe, you're up.
Yeah, you know, I have to say, for somebody that doesn't know a lot about it, that was pretty amazing. Because I think that really captured everything. I mean, just following it through my own thoughts, you know, when you're chanting Om, it's this calming effect that you're expanding your consciousness, and you can see the relationship. And I won't explain it as beautifully as you just did, but I mean, I'm just mapping this out, how that relates, I think, to the release of energy as well in the body, in the sense that you're connecting on a deeper level, spiritually and intellectually as well, and as well as there's an actual practice that's allowing you to kind of connect with something bigger, I will just say that, than yourself. And so that was, I think that was beautifully put. I almost forget everything I was going to talk about, because one of the things that in reading about Kali was this idea of transformation as well. And I kind of find that to be true across, again, this is interesting how it exists across the Indian culture, is I find it to be much deeper than things in the West. I'm not comparing the two, but you have multiple gods and multiple goddesses that encompass so many different aspects of spirituality. In the West, you don't necessarily have that same, at least in the United States, you don't have that same kind of, shall we say, diversity, or separating out of all the qualities that each one of these gods and goddesses bring. It's much more, and I could be wrong, and I mean in saying this, but I mean it just seems much more limited. If I were to just say the Blessed Mother and God, they both have, you know, their specific roles, very important roles, and the role of the feminine is absolutely, you know, something that's, you know, obviously very important in the West as well. But it's interesting to look at how the two cultures look at the feminine and the masculine and how they work together. it's and I think that once you understand both, you have a much deeper and richer experience as with spirituality, as far as understanding and how to connect on a deeper level with your or become conscious with the universe, I'll just say. So that's the best way I could actually explain it in my own terms. But I thought that the way you articulated Tantra and Om and connected everything together, that was excellent. And I'm not comparing West and East. I'm just saying there's difference.
Thank you, Joe. I have to agree. I love the way you did that, Shrikant. And Nalini, I just wanted to say one more thing before I move on to Shrikant, is that when you bring up you, I mean, yes, we've studied it before, but it's always good to hear new perspectives on it and new insights on it. So, I mean, don't ever worry about like if you think it's been done before. We always like to hear new views on it, and it just always brings a new perspective. So thank you.
Thank you.
Shrikant.
Thank you, Evanik. Evanik, I had 2 points. One, I wanted to address what Joe said. And second, I wanted to, kind of give an illustration of how this relationship between God and Goddess works. And I have a really elaborate example of how that works in Indian culture. So if, if we have time, I would love to do that. It's maybe about 7-8 minutes. But it will actually put it in context of how kind of the Indian mind deals with that. Because though you can get fascinated with goddesses in India, if you don't get the other part and don't see the relationship going back and forth, because you can, as I was saying, there are the 6 characters. You can't really look at any of the characters without understanding the other 5. So it's that's what I would like to do. But let me first, if it's okay, let me go ahead and first talk about what Joe is saying. See, what happens is that I think that us modern people actually do not appreciate either the West or the East. Okay, you go to India and you see how religion is practiced. It is far more superficial. It is far more ritualistic. I mean, it is true that there are many people in India who are deeply spiritual and who get it, but that is like maybe 1% or 2% of the people. I think what we are trying to do is that we are trying to go back to Bhagavad Gita. We're going back to the original scriptures. And what you're seeing is that. What I'm finding when I read Gospel of John, it's the same thing. West doesn't know the Bible. It's really, they are missing like 99% of the value. And so the approach that and the thing is that I genuinely think I do not understand these things. Okay. I'm not saying this out of, false humility. The thing is that when I look at these things, every time I look at it, I see something new. And I say, what is this? And this is true for Gospel of John, and this is true for Bhagavad Gita. These are incredibly deep works, and the modern mind, we are too focused on analyzing things, and we don't really know how to see integrations. And these works are all about integration. So we grasp them very, very poorly. Okay. And this applies to both the, Chinese tradition, the Indian tradition, and the Western tradition. So then how do you go about doing that? So the approach, I think Yasuhiko put it very beautifully. You have to really commune with each of the work and understand it, relate to it in its own terms. Okay, just relate to it in its own terms. Just immerse yourself in it. Try to see how it thinks, how it flows. do the same for all of them. And then slowly in you, things will start to come together. Like when you try to compare them, like when if I try to compare them like apples to apples, I don't even know what an apple is. Okay, so whatever I get is not going to be anything valuable. So I think a lot of the focus has to be on just seeing these things. And that's what we've been doing. This entire practice that we are doing of going through, thanks to Yogeshwar, going through Bhagavad Gita, or going through Gospel of John, going through Tao Te Ching, we are, you just have to let that, and you will, at least I'm finding that every day I learn new things. And the standard for Indian thought for learning is very high. Okay, it's very simple. And some of these, the best capturing of it I've seen is in Indian classical music. So you're singing in Indian classical music is not a performance art. It is a spiritual discipline. You're basically singing to God. Okay, and even the greatest of the maestros, at the age of 85, okay, the way they approach it is that, oh, I'm trying to understand this rag. Okay, I've gotten some things, but it's still, I don't quite fully get it. Okay. And again, it's not false modesty, because the standard is very simple. You're singing to God. Did God come? Is God here? If he's not here, then you need to try some more. That is the standard. So it is all about spirit on earth. And it's not a wish. It's not saying, oh, that would be nice. No, no, no. You're actually trying to make that happen. And that is the standard of knowledge. That's the standard of spirituality. That's the standard of materiality. Okay. And by the way, it's the same standard in Gospel of John. It's no different. It's the same standard in Tao Te Ching. Is Tao flowing through you or not? Is your body a temple or not? These are all ways of saying the same thing. Us moderns do not hold ourselves to those standards. And we think that going from knowing this little and this little is something, but really it is nothing. So that's what I would say.
Shrikant, we don't have, does anybody else have any questions or comments? If you do, you could type exclamation point in the chat. Or otherwise, Shrikant, I've made you co-host, so whenever you're ready to present. And Rupali also has a poem at the end, so she'll be going after you. And then
Perfect. And
then Brian, you will be going at the end to talk about the next part of the Divine Feminine series.
Wonderful. So I'm going to read. This is actually small. This is actually a work of Nyaneshwar. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to explain Shaivism. This is actually, in Indian corpus, this is called Kashmiri Shaivism. This is the integration between Shiva and Shakti. It's a beautiful work in Marathi. It is 13th century Marathi, so I'm not very good at it, but I have translated this myself. So this is my translation of this one. So I'm going to just mute everybody so that the sound is as good as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and just read it out. Okay, this is just a translation. And then if you have any comments or questions, would love that. Give me just a second here. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Full screen. Okay. All-pervading Shiva Shakti. Invocation. I begin by paying my respects to my teacher, blissful Nivruttinath, who is my refuge. This knowledge of the power of Shiva is the greatest and the most blissful of all knowledge. It is overflowing with compassion and grace. I glorify it and worship it. Advaita, non-dual, means in spite of being one integrated whole, creating an impression of separateness or duality. Shiva Shakti, in spite of being only one, creates an illusion of being two. That is why it is difficult to tell which part is Shiva and which part is Shakti. Shiva Shakti is the root of the world. They show us the fundamental principle of the soul, which is one. For the sake of understanding their principle, I worship them. Shiva is the beginning, existence, and destruction of the world. Where these three end, there is completeness. I worship this all-encompassing, complete Shiva. This chapter is on all-pervading nature of Shiva Shakti. Its oneness is described. Jnaneshwar says, Shiva Shakti are the parents of this world. They do not have any name. They are the root of the world. I worship them. They are both father and mother. They keep changing their forms as it pleases them. In the passion of their love for each other, they intermingle with each other. Then no duality remains. But thereafter, in order to express their love for each other, they separate. They both exist and do not exist as separate beings. But without being two, they cannot express their love for each other. So they, in spite of being one, create an illusion of being two. How can we understand their true nature? They so love to engage in their own bliss that they, in spite of being two, are one. They do not depart from their oneness, even in jest. They're so afraid of parting from each other that in spite of creating this massive child, the universe, they do not even step away from each other. Both lovingly gaze at the entire world they have jointly created, but do not let a third come into being and touch their bliss. Both have the same rights. Both shine with the same radiance. From eternity, both have been living happily with each other. Difference tried on its own to seek duality, But he too, ashamed, gave up and lost himself in the sweetness of oneness. Because of Shiva, Shakti becomes complete. And without Shakti, there is no Shiva. How can one describe their oneness? Both are dear as life to one another. What kind of a union is this? They are so vast that this world cannot contain them. Yet, they dwell happily in the smallest atom. Without each other, they do not even make a single blade of grass. In this universe-spanning family, only two live, Shiva and Shakti. When Shiva sleeps, his beloved Shakti does the work of both of them. She is awake, even in the midst of her sleep. This entire world is Shakti's creation, which Shiva sees as a dream while he sleeps. If Shiva awakens, the dream is destroyed and the world ends. If Shakti stops creating the world, Shiva awakens and the world ends. Shiva and Shakti both unite their duality into oneness. Only for the sake of playing with each other, they become separate into two halves and exhibit duality. Therefore, their male-female distinction is in the name only. Both together are Shiva alone. In the whole universe, there is only Shivaness. In spite of it, Shiva Shakti are in everything, half and half. Two sticks, one sound. Two flowers, one fragrance. Two lamps, but one light. Two lips, but one story. So two Shiva and Shakti, but one universe. In spite of being two, they produce just one universe. In this manner, in spite of being two, since time eternal, they have been enjoying the same one bliss. Shakti, being devoted to her husband, cannot do anything without her Lord. And Shiva, in spite of being all-powerful, cannot do anything without his Shakti. Who is Shiva and who is Shakti? It's very difficult to distinguish. We cannot grasp their nature. Sugar and its sweetness, camphor and its fragrance. Anyone who tries to distinguish them is confused and lost. If you try to catch all the light coming from a lamp, you will grasp the lamp in your hand. So when you try to obtain Shakti, you obtain Shiva. Sun's beauty is its radiance. Source of the radiance is the sun. Likewise, without any distinctions, Shiva Shakti are splendid in their beauty. From its reflection, you can recognize a thing. So from their duality, you can understand their oneness. Shiva, Purusha, shapeless, without any qualities, is the husband of Shakti. She derives all her power from the power of her husband. Because of Shiva, Shakti obtains its existence. She, due to whom Shiva submerges his Shivaness and manifests in life-giving Shakti. In the creation of the world, Shakti is the richness and power of Shiva. She carries the entire responsibility of creation. Shy that her husband is without form, she decorates herself gloriously, taking on all the names and forms in the universe. Where there is paucity of oneness, she shows the fecundity of her myriad play of forms. Through her work, she demonstrates the greatness of her husband to the world. And the husband, while remaining in the background, makes his wife famous and revered in the eyes of the world. The husband is the seer. When he does not see his wife, he becomes dejected. The myriad creations of Shakti are a feast for the awareness of Shiva. Shiva relishes this feast produced by Shakti and is satiated by them. While Shiva is asleep, Shakti creates everything in the world. This child, the universe, is produced by Shakti without active participation of Shiva. So this child does not recognize his own father. Shiva is invisible to this child. Roles of both Shiva and Shakti are carried out by Shakti herself. Without Shakti, Shiva cannot experience bliss. Shakti is the body of Shiva, and Shiva is the principle of Shakti. Both delight in each other. Just like wind and its speed, gold and its luster are one, so also with Shakti there is Shiva as they pervade the world. With musk, there is its fragrance. With fire, there is its heat. So with Shakti, there is only Shiva. When approaching the sun, day and night disappear. Just like that, the duality between Shiva and Shakti disappears when you approach them. Shiva Shakti are beyond the primordial sound Om, from which the creation of the world took place. This world, generated by words, having eaten a feast of duality, can be seen as being one with Shiva Shakti. Naneshwar bows to this world creating the couple of Shiva Shakti. All language is frozen when attempting to describe Shiva Shakti. Just like at the time of deluge, there is water everywhere, and there is no distinction between the river and the sea. During a storm, wind becomes one with speed, merges with the sky, and in the bright radiance, sun cannot be seen. Just like that, while observing Shiva Shakti, the seer and his sight merges with them. It is this all-pervading Shiva Shakti, spanning inside and outside, in the home and in the world, that I worship. They are a flow such that without climbing into it, you cannot drink its water. If I were to try to bow to this inseparable Shiva Shakti while being separate from them, I would only be claiming duality. Just as gold ornaments do not become ornaments by being apart from gold, I do not worship them by being separate from them. When the tongue speaks the word tongue, what is the difference between the tongue and the word tongue? When the river merges with the ocean, there is no male-female difference between them. Both their water is merged. Is there duality in water? Even when the sun considers itself as the source of light, and light itself, is its oneness lost? When starlight falls on the moon, is the moon's own light reduced? Does it need a second light to look for its own light? The luster of pearl does not hide it, but accentuates its beauty. Just because Om has 3 constituent sounds Is its oneness lost? Without impairing its oneness, if beauty can be achieved, why should water not delight in the fragrance of flowers floating on its waves? That is why, not regarding Shiva Shakti as separate from me, I worship them. After moving aside the mirror, the reflection is absorbed into the original thing. When the wind stops, waves merge into the ocean, becoming one with it. When you wake up, you are aware of your own self. Similarly, waking up from the dreams of my intellect, I worship Shiva Shakti. Only after giving up the desire for saltiness can salt merge into the ocean. So giving up my ego, I have merged into Shiva Shakti. When you remove layer after layer of the bark of a banana tree, the air in it merges into the sky. So have I worshipped and merged into Shiva Shakti.
Thank you so much for that, Shrikant. That was beautiful. I mean, you know what it brought to me is that the importance. I mean, I already knew the importance of Polly, but I remember when we talked and, you're like, you can't have the female without the male. And I see that as missing. So when I'm doing these in the future, I will definitely be doing the male and female goddesses. It's just, I love the point of where one couldn't, like, one would sleep and the other would work, but they were still one. And if one stopped the work, the other one would wake up and wake out of their sleep. And the beauty of the unity, and I think for me as a Westerner, to see that unification and the equality, and really, again, like Rupali said, it's really not about male and female. It's about um, all these qualities are needed in each of us. They are in each of us, and approaching it that way, seeing why you need both energies, why you need the inanimate and the animate, why you need the stability in the energy. It just really, like, that poem really just brought it home. So thank you. Beautiful. And is there a link or the name of that poem again? Because I want to read it like several times to really get it.
So that's just my translation. So I'll send it to you.
Thank you. Wait, what? Okay. I'm just amazed by you every day, Shrikant. That was your translation? Like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's my translation, because I didn't like the English translations, so I just translated it.
Okay, I'm amazed. Rupali, go right ahead.
Shrikant, that was amazing. Beautiful. Well written, very poetic. I wanted to say that, when you read verse 9, it reminded me of William Blake's Auguries of Innocence, where there's the juxtaposition to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity for an hour. So that's what came to my mind when I heard, especially verse 9 of your poem. So that was, it's the duality, but just becoming one, unity and manifesting. And so you have this, always that dance. And even if you see the movement of Kundalini, and that's about all I know about it, is its serpent-like form going up, and that integration, it's constant dance and constant integration. Very well done, Shrikant. This was a treat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's all Naneshwar, Naneshwar, he does all of this stuff. And then you can just, put it in English, and it's still, the original is amazing because it's so difficult to get the kind of the depth of thought and all these amazing metaphors, and you have to translate it. So it's amazing experience. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, I'm just going to second what everybody says, but the thing that's really amazing is just how beautiful this is and how it stands out from everyday life. That's what's amazing in it to me. I mean, is that you start to have such an appreciation for the female and male, and just how that actually comes to life. I feel like this actually shouldn't be so unusual, but it was quite unusual and quite remarkable. And thank you. You're muted. You're muted, Shrikant.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I think Nalini wanted to say something.
No, that's what I wanted to say, that please send it to me too. It was just a beautiful poem, and I would like to read it again and again, like Avanique said. It was just a beautiful translation. And then Rupali, what you talked about, the stanza 9 and the poem, that was beautiful. That's right. Just one thing though, Shrikant, you talked about how in India, the music, many people who are very serious musicians, they sing for their God that they worship, or in front of, or in a temple. I worked at Mary Joy, and I had a very close friend there. She was from Bengal, one of the doctors, and she had a beautiful, beautiful voice, because she came to our house, and once she sang for us. She wouldn't sing for anyone. So I was doing a cultural program for the temple, and I asked her, and she said, Nalini, no, I don't sing it for anyone. I just sing it for my God, and that's it. And she just had a beautiful voice. I can still hear her, but she never sang it publicly. So many of them do that.
Excellent. Thank you, Nalini.
If anybody else doesn't have any questions or comments, Rupali, are you ready?
Yes. So I don't know, because I was going to read a poem by Rudyard Kipling about the female of the species is deadlier than the male. And okay, let me read that now. Can I share my screen?
You should be able to. I made you a co-host.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The Female of the Species by Rudyard Kipling. When the Himalayan peasant meets the he-bear in his pride, he shouts to scare the monster, who will often turn aside. But the she-bear, thus accosted, rends the peasant tooth and nail, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. When Nag, the basking cobra, hears the careless foot of a man, he will sometimes wriggle sideways and avoid it if he can. But his mate makes no such motion, where she camps beside the trail, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. When the earlier Jesuit fathers preached the Hurons and Choctaws, they prayed to be delivered from the vengeance of the scows. 'Twas the women, not the warriors, turned those Stark enthusiasts fail, for the female of the species is more deadly than the male. Man's timid heart is bursting with the things he must not say, for the woman that God gave him isn't his to give away. But when hunter meets with husbands, each confirms the other tale. The female of the species is more deadly than the male. Man, a bear in most relations, worm and savage otherwise. Man propounds negotiations. Man accepts the compromise. Very rarely will he squarely push the logic of a fact to its ultimate conclusion in unmitigated act. Fear or foolishness impels him, ere he lay the wicked low, to concede some form of trial, even to his fiercest foe. Mirth obscene diverts his anger, doubt and pity oft perplex him in dealing with an issue to the scandal of the sex. But the woman that God gave him, every fiber of her frame, proves her launched for one sole issue, armed and engined for the same. And to serve that single issue, lest the generations fail, the female of the species must be deadlier than the male. She who faces death by torture for each life beneath her breast, may not deal in doubt or pity, must not swear for fact or jest. These be purely male diversions, not in these her honor dwells. She, the other law we live by, is the law and nothing else. She can bring no more to living than the powers that make her great, as the mother of the infant and the mistress of the maid. And when babe and man are lacking, and she strides unclaimed to claim, her right as femme and barren, her equipment is the same. She is wedded to convictions in default of grossest ties. Her contentions are her children. Heaven help him who denies. He will meet no sour discussion, but the instant white-hot, wild, vacant female of the species warring as for spouse and child. Unprovoked and awful charges, even so the she-bear fights. Speech that drips, corrodes, and poisons, even so the cobra bites. Scientific vivisection of one nerve till it is raw, and the victim writhes in anguish like the Jesuit with the squaw. So it comes that man, the coward, when he gathers to confer with his fellow braves in council, dare not leave a place for her, where, at war with life and conscience, he uplifts his erring hands to some god of abstract justice which no woman understands. And man knows it, knows moreover that the woman that God gave him must command but may not govern, shall enthrall but not enslave him. And she knows, because she warns him, and her instincts never fail, that the female of her species is more deadly than the male. So,
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say thank you, Rupali. Go ahead.
thank you. So for Mother's Day, we read this, we have our literature teacher, he has a similar presentation with all female goddesses from different time periods. And at the end, the students read this poem and they discuss it. All children can relate to a she-bear trying to protect her cub, and they get it to some level. And then they relate it to their mothers, this poem.
Rupali, that is a powerful poem in all forms. I just kept thinking of Kali, like when
Yeah,
you were reading this poem, is especially when you talk about the love that the woman has. And I think you had mentioned it earlier in the presentation where you talked about, the mama bear and that, she loves deeply. She loves people in her life, but she will fiercely protect them to the point where she can be deadly if you come close to harming her babies, her husband, any member of her family, she will come for you. And so I just kept thinking of Kali. That's like a poetic way of describing Kali, but
yeah.
it was just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we usually present Durga and Kali and then read this to the children. All others are very gentle mothers.
That's so funny. I just when you say you present Durga and Kali and then you read the poem, like, oh my God. I'm just thinking, what are the kids thinking? But
Yeah.
yeah, that's just funny. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If you do, you can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Uh, it looks like Brian and Penny or Penny.
No,
Oh, okay. If there are no questions or comments, Brian, you want to tell them what's next?
well, I think the amazing translation from Shrikant and the poem from Rudyard Kipling are a great way to end the evening. So I don't want to carry on much beyond that. I'll just say that next time we'll look at the very first chapter in Price's book, which is the truly prehistoric Paleolithic first images of goddesses that have been discovered. But I'll augment that with some further archaeology and comments by Joseph Campbell, who's also very studied in this area and very much appreciates the goddess traditions. And I don't think you need to read any of that stuff in advance. If you happen to have the book, you can look at Isabella Price's chapter, but I think it'll be a good way to wrap up our discussion of this book. And there should be some time maybe for some general observations about the whole book at the end. So if people want to, either in advance or during the meeting, give some thought to that, that's another point I hope to touch on.
Thank you, Brian. And with that, if there are no more questions or comments, I want to thank Rupali so much for all of your help. Like, you added such a richness to this presentation and such a liveliness, that there was no way I could bring. So I really appreciate you, and with everything that you have going on, that you chose to help me. So and really just make this presentation so much better. So thank you. I also want to thank Shrikant for everything that he added to the presentation, to reading his own translation of Naneshwar. That was just amazing. And I want to thank everybody else that came and participated tonight. Nalini, Joe, Brian, and Penny. And Brian, Penny, I want to thank you too, for agreeing to do this with me and explore the divine feminine and the goddesses. And I couldn't have done this without you both. So, and I'm looking forward to continuing with you guys, with all of you. And I want to thank everybody else for coming tonight. There are many ways that you could have spent your Friday night, and you chose to spend it with us. And I don't want that to be lost. I always say this is our meetup. This isn't my meetup. It's everyone's meetup. It's every one of you that makes this great. So with that, good night.
Good night. Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.